Welcome to Famous People, English Stories. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
Introduction. This story is about Mia and Leo, two people who never planned to fall in love, but life had its own way of bringing them together. It's a simple story. No rich families. No big cities. Just two people, one bookstore, and the quiet magic of small moments. As you listen, you'll not only enjoy the story, you'll practice real English, spoken in real-life situations. Let's begin where all good love stories begin, not with fireworks, but with something ordinary. A hello. Chapter 1: The Power of a Simple Hello. Mia worked in a small bookstore on the corner of Maple Street. Every morning, she opened the shop, dusted the shelves, and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. She loved quiet mornings, books that smelled like paper and time, and the sound of pages turning. She didn't believe in love stories. She thought they only lived inside books. Leo was new in town. He moved from the city after quitting his job. He wanted peace, something slower. On his first morning, he walked into Mia's bookstore looking for nothing in particular. The bell above the door rang softly. Mia looked up. Leo smiled and said, "Hi." Just one word. A simple hello. But sometimes, that's enough to start a whole new chapter. Leo didn't know what he was looking for. But when Mia asked, "Can I help you find something?" he said, "Maybe a story I haven't read before." She smiled, handing him a book without a word. It was called The Quiet Heart. He bought it, but he didn't leave right away. They talked about the weather, books, and the smell of new coffee. He came back the next day, and the next. Not always for books. Sometimes just for a conversation. She began to wait for the sound of the bell at 9:15 every morning. He began to notice the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she laughed. There was no rush. No big drama. Just two people growing closer through shared mornings and slow smiles. And that's how it began. A simple hello. A book. A second cup of coffee. And something soft began to grow between them. Chapter 2: Rain and Confessions. The rain came suddenly. It was a Thursday morning. The sky had been gray since sunrise, but Mia didn't expect the downpour. She stood near the door of the bookstore, watching the street blur under heavy rain. People rushed by, holding newspapers over their heads, jumping over puddles. The bell above the door stayed quiet. She thought maybe Leo wouldn't come that day. Maybe he would stay home, like most people did when the sky turned angry. She was almost disappointed. But at 9:17, the door opened. Water dripped from Leo's coat, and his hair was soaked. "You're late," Mia said, trying not to smile. "You're early," Leo replied, shaking off his umbrella. She laughed. He always had a strange way of answering. He walked slowly toward the counter, pulled off his jacket, and sat on the stool near the coffee machine. Without asking, Mia poured him a cup. They watched the rain in silence. "It's beautiful," Leo said finally. "The rain?" "Yes. When you're inside. When it's not touching you." Mia looked at him. He didn't say things most people said. And sometimes, his words stayed in her head for hours after he left. They sipped coffee, listening to the soft jazz playing from the old radio behind the counter. "I used to love rainy days," Leo said. "As a kid, I would run outside with no shoes. My mom hated it. But it made me feel free." "Do you feel free now?" Mia asked. He was quiet for a moment. "I'm trying." She waited. Something in his voice had changed. "I left my job because I wasn't happy," he said, finally. "It paid well. I lived in a good apartment. But I woke up every morning feeling empty. I didn't know who I was anymore." Mia nodded slowly. She knew that feeling too well. The feeling of being stuck in a life that looked good from the outside but felt wrong on the inside. "I moved here hoping I'd find something different. Not success. Not money. Just something real." He didn't look at her when he said it. He looked at the rain. But Mia felt the words like a whisper inside her chest. "I think," she said, "real things come slowly." Leo finally turned his head toward her. "You think so?" "Yes. Some people look for fireworks. Big signs. But I think the real things are quiet. Like books. Or morning coffee. Or rain." He smiled then. A quiet, grateful smile. And in that moment, something passed between them. Not a promise, not a question. Just understanding. The storm outside softened. The sky grew lighter. Mia refilled his cup. "Tell me more about your childhood," she said. Leo leaned back, thinking. "All right. But only if you tell me about yours too." The bell didn't ring for the next 2 hours. And neither of them noticed. Because sometimes, love begins with rain and grows with honesty. And sometimes, all it takes is one morning to feel a little less alone. Chapter 3: The Book He Never Returned. A week passed. Then another. Leo didn't come. The bell above the door stayed silent each morning. Mia told herself he was just busy, or maybe away. But deep down, she felt the absence. Like a missing page in a book. She kept glancing at the door at 9:15, even when she told herself not to. The bookstore felt different without him. The music played the same. The coffee smelled the same. But the mornings were quieter, heavier. She cleaned the counter more than usual. She rearranged the shelves. And every now and then, she looked at the small spot near the window where he used to sit with his coffee. Empty. Then she noticed it. One afternoon, while cleaning behind the counter, Mia found the book Leo had borrowed, The Quiet Heart. It had never been returned. He'd once said it reminded him of his mother, how she used to read to him before bed. He never said why he kept coming back for it, though. Now it sat there, in the return basket, but something was different. Inside the cover, a piece of paper was folded carefully. Mia hesitated before opening it. It wasn't long. "Mia. I didn't know how to say goodbye." I didn't plan to leave like this. Thank you for the mornings. The coffee. The peace. You reminded me that simple things can be beautiful again. I needed that more than you know. I'm going back to the city, for now. But I'll return this time, I promise. If I ever finish writing my own story, you'll be the first to read it. Leo. Mia read the note 3 times. Then she sat down. She felt a mix of emotions: surprise, disappointment, warmth. He hadn't said goodbye. But he hadn't disappeared either. She placed the book back on the counter, note still inside. She didn't cry. She didn't get angry. She just sat with the silence. The next day, she left the book on the shelf near the register. And every morning after, she placed a second cup next to her own, just in case. Time moved on, slowly. The bookstore filled with other people. Conversations, stories, laughter. But none of them were Leo. She wondered sometimes, was it real, what they shared? Or just two lonely people crossing paths for a little while? Then one evening, just before closing, a young woman walked in. She looked around and asked, "Is this where Leo used to come?" Mia blinked. "Yes, do you know him?" The girl smiled. "He's my brother. He asked me to give you this." She handed Mia a small notebook. No words, just a cover that said, Chapter 1. Inside, on the first page, was Leo's handwriting. Every story begins with a small moment. Mine began with a cup of coffee and a woman who didn't believe in love stories. But I did. And I still do. Mia closed the notebook, holding it close. He was writing his story. Maybe, in time, she would write hers too. For now, she made 2 cups of coffee every morning. Because hope is like a good book. You turn the page, even when you don't know what comes next. Chapter 4, Lost and Found. 3 months passed. The leaves turned from green to gold. Then gold to gray. Mia had never liked autumn before. But this year, something about it felt different. The air was softer. The light more honest. She found herself slowing down, just a little, with each step she took to open the bookstore. Every morning, she still placed 2 cups of coffee on the counter. Most days, the second cup went cold. But she didn't stop. She read the notebook Leo had sent, page by page. Sometimes she reread his sentences, wondering what he felt when he wrote them. Wondering if he missed their mornings as much as she did. Wondering if he would ever return, as he had promised. Then one day, something unexpected happened. She lost the notebook. She had taken it with her to the park, just a short walk from the bookstore. It was a quiet day. She sat under a tree, reading and watching the wind play with the falling leaves. But when she returned home that evening, the notebook was gone. She searched her bag, her coat, her counter. Nothing. She ran back to the park just as the sun disappeared behind the trees. Gone. That night, she barely slept. She wasn't sure why it hurt so much. It was just a notebook. Just pages. But to her, it was more than that. It was the one part of Leo she could still touch. Losing it felt like losing him again. The next morning, she didn't make 2 cups of coffee. Just one. And she didn't open the store right away. Instead, she sat in silence behind the counter, holding the empty second mug, thinking about the quiet space Leo had left behind. She stayed that way for a long time. Until the bell rang. She looked up, heart jumping. It wasn't Leo. It was a boy, no more than 10, holding something in his hands. "Are you Mia?" he asked shyly. "Yes." He handed her the notebook. "I found this under the tree yesterday. My mom said you might be looking for it." Mia took the notebook slowly, her fingers trembling. The cover was a little wet, the pages slightly bent, but it was whole. "Thank you," she whispered. The boy smiled and left without another word. She opened the notebook. On the back page, one she hadn't seen before, was new writing. Different from Leo's. A child's messy hand. Books find their way home. I hope people do too. She didn't know why, but she laughed. Then she cried. It wasn't the kind of crying that hurts. It was the kind that clears something inside you. Like rain after a long, dry summer. That evening, she sat by the window and began to write. Not about Leo. Not about love. But about the little things. About the boy who returned a notebook. About the park. About the quiet ache of missing someone. About the second cup of coffee. And somehow, by writing her own story, she didn't feel so lost anymore. Sometimes you lose things. Sometimes people leave. But if a notebook can find its way back, maybe love can too. Chapter 5. The Letter in the Book. Winter arrived quietly. Mia began wearing heavier scarves, and the windows of the bookstore fogged up every morning from the warm coffee and cold air. The town slowed down. Fewer people walked by. Fewer came in. Still, the bookstore stayed open. And every day, Mia showed up. She read more. She wrote more. And though Leo's notebook sat safely in her bag now, she didn't read it every day. Something inside her had shifted. She had stopped waiting and started living. One afternoon, just before closing, an older woman entered the shop. She wore a long coat, a hat with a feather, and carried an umbrella even though the sky was dry. She moved slowly through the store, running her fingers along the book spines, pausing now and then as if listening for a whisper from the past. Mia watched her with quiet curiosity. After about 20 minutes, the woman approached the counter, holding a worn book. Its cover was dark green with gold letters, The Quiet Heart. Mia blinked. "That's a special book," she said. The woman smiled. "It found me today." She handed the book over, and as Mia opened it to check the inside cover, something slipped out. An envelope. It was addressed to Mia in neat, familiar handwriting. Leo's handwriting. She looked up, but the woman was already walking toward the door. "Wait, did he give this to you?" Mia asked. The woman turned, her eyes kind. "He said this book belonged in your hands." just like the letter. Then she was gone. Mia locked the door behind her, heart pounding. She held the envelope like it might vanish. She took a deep breath and opened it. Mia. If you're reading this, it means the book found its way back to you. Just like I hoped to. I've been writing. Pages and pages. But no story feels complete without you in it. I tried to leave quietly, thinking it was the kindest thing. But maybe love isn't quiet. Maybe it's the part of us that speaks the loudest, even when we say nothing. I don't know where this ends. I just know where I want to begin again. With you. If you're still making 2 cups of coffee in the morning, maybe one day, I'll be there to drink the second. Until then, keep the book. And keep writing your story. I'll find my way to the next chapter. Leo. Mia read the letter once, then again. Each time, it felt more real. Like he was near, just out of view. Like the door might open at any moment. But it didn't. Still, she didn't feel sad. Not this time. She placed the letter inside the book, then placed the book beside her journal on the counter. The coffee pot hissed quietly in the background. Snow began to fall outside the window. She made 2 cups of coffee. Not out of habit this time, but out of hope. Because love doesn't always arrive when we want it to. Sometimes, it returns when we're finally ready. Chapter 6, Saying Yes to Slow Love. The snow didn't stop for days. The whole town looked like it had been wrapped in soft white cotton. Cars moved slower. People walked quieter. Everything felt peaceful, like the world had paused for a moment to take a breath. Mia loved this time of year. Not for the cold or the holidays, but for the stillness. She liked how snow made everything simple. Just white roads, warm lights, and the sound of boots crunching against frozen ground. One evening, just before closing, she sat by the window with her journal open, her coffee growing cold. She hadn't written much that day. Her mind felt full of thoughts she couldn't quite put into words. Then, the bell above the door rang. She didn't look up right away. She thought it was just another customer picking up a book for the weekend. But then she heard the footsteps. Slow, familiar. A hesitation before each step. Her heart began to race. She looked up. Leo stood in the doorway, snow in his hair, his coat half buttoned, his eyes unsure. He didn't say anything at first. Neither did she. Then he stepped forward and smiled. "I didn't want to miss winter," he said. Mia laughed softly. "You're a few storms late." "I know," he said, removing his coat. "I got stuck in edits. And fear. And everything else." She stood behind the counter, watching him like a dream she wasn't sure she could trust. But then he walked to the stool near the coffee pot, the same place he used to sit, and said, "Is the second cup still waiting?" Without a word, Mia poured him a fresh one. He took a sip, closed his eyes, and smiled. Still the best in town. They sat in silence, just like before. But this silence was different. It was full. After a moment, Leo spoke. I read your story, he said. The one you shared in that small magazine. About the boy in the park and the second cup. Mia felt a rush of heat in her cheeks. You read that? Twice. She smiled, lowering her eyes. I didn't use your name, she said. I know. But I saw myself in every line. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thin book. On the cover, Chapter 1, but now it had a second line beneath it, by Leo and Mia. I rewrote it, he said. It didn't feel complete before. Now it does. Or at least, it's beginning to. She took the book, turned the pages, and saw her own words mixed with his. Her sentences. His chapters. Their story. So, what now? She asked, her voice soft. Leo looked at her with eyes that didn't need to rush. We take it slow. One morning at a time. Mia nodded. Yes, she said. Not a dramatic yes. Not a movie scene yes. Just a quiet one. A real one. They sat until closing, drinking coffee and sharing silence. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, something warm began to grow again. Because love doesn't always need big words or perfect timing. Sometimes, it just needs two people willing to begin again, with patience, with kindness, with a simple yes. Chapter 7, a new chapter begins. The snow melted slowly, and the streets of the town began to show their colors again, brown stone, red bricks, little patches of green grass peeking through the frost. Winter was ending. The bookstore, too, seemed to stretch and breathe after the long cold months. Mia and Leo fell into a new rhythm, not one made of routines, but of moments. Some mornings, they opened the bookstore together. Other times, Leo would come in after working on his writing at the cafe down the street. They didn't need to say much anymore. A glance, a smile, a shared silence between bookshelves said enough. One afternoon, Mia found a folded note in her coat pocket. She didn't remember putting it there. It said, Today, I passed by the park where you lost the notebook. I sat on the bench and imagined what you looked like, sitting under the tree. That's how I fall for you, Mia, not all at once, but through the echoes of your days. She read it twice, then tucked it back into her pocket without a word. She didn't need to ask when he had written it. She just smiled, walked to the back shelf, and returned with a blank notebook. She wrote on the first page, Let's write the next chapter together. They kept the notebook behind the counter, hidden under a stack of old menus and bookmarks. Every few days, one of them would add something, a memory, a sketch, a single word that meant more than a sentence. It wasn't always perfect. Sometimes Leo disappeared into his writing for days, barely answering messages. Sometimes Mia grew impatient, wondering if he would vanish again. But they talked. Really talked. Not in dramatic scenes, but in the quiet way people do when they've chosen to stay. They went for walks when the weather warmed. Sat on benches. Shared stories from before they met. Laughed about their awkward first conversations. And slowly, the bookstore became not just a place where their story started, but where it continued to grow. One morning, as Leo was shelving new books, Mia watched him from behind the counter. He was humming a tune, something soft and old. She thought about how far they'd come, not in distance, but in closeness. She didn't need fireworks or fairy tales anymore. She had a man who came back. A story that kept unfolding. And a bookstore that smelled like coffee, rain, and new beginnings. When a customer entered that morning and asked, "Do you sell love stories?" Mia smiled and pointed to the center shelf. "All the best ones are here," she said. But in her heart, she knew her favorite love story wasn't in any book. It was still being written, one quiet day at a time. Conclusion: simple stories, real love. Love doesn't always begin with big moments. Sometimes it begins with a quiet hello in a bookstore. A shared cup of coffee. A story handed across the counter. Sometimes love doesn't shout. It speaks in soft voices, in patient gestures, in the spaces between words. Mia and Leo's story wasn't perfect. It didn't follow a clear path. There were pauses. Missed steps. Pages torn out and written again. But maybe that's what made it real. There were no grand speeches. No dramatic endings. Just two people who met by chance and chose to return, again and again. Because real love is not about rushing. It's about staying when things get quiet. It's about showing up even when you're unsure. It's about writing your story, one sentence at a time, with someone who listens. Mia once believed that love stories only lived inside books. But now she knows they can live in the real world too. In tiny bookstores. In handwritten notes. In the way someone remembers how you take your coffee. And Leo? He once believed he was lost. That peace was something he could only find far away. But in the stillness of one small town, and the voice of one kind woman, he found the beginning of something true. They're still writing their story. And maybe, in some way, so are you. Wherever you are on your journey, in love, in language, or in life, remember this. The best stories don't need to be loud. They just need to be honest. Thank you for listening to a simple love story for English learners. We hope Mia and Leo's journey helped you not only enjoy a beautiful story, but also learn new words, phrases, and the rhythm of natural English. And now, your turn. Take a moment to write your next sentence. Maybe it's a note to someone. A journal entry. A message you've been meaning to send. Your English doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. If this story touched your heart or helped your English grow, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with a friend who loves quiet stories and big feelings. And remember, every day is a new chapter. See you in the next story.